Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the channel. The South African Closed 2026 featuring some of the best players in the country. It is incredible. The ladies section, or the women's section, absolutely on fire. We're going to talk about that first, and then we'll get to the open section, which is a little bit less interesting, but still very, very interesting. The ladies section is incredible because we had like a 4-player tie going into this round for first place. We had Chloe Badenhorst. She wins her game against Joya Imkhitha, who had a very nice victory yesterday against Hayley Nel. And this game, you can see it started as a bit of a Slav defense. We had a mistake there at giving up a pawn. And from there, Chloe nicely transitioned. She, of course, is completely winning at this point. It's like +3. We can take here. We can double the rooks. Get this. The bishops are the same color. And rook takes d6 is beautiful. Is a beautiful way to finish the game. 24 moves. She dispatches Joya. The idea is if you take, there's this skewer, and you pick up the rook, and you'll have the bishop left. But Hayley Nel also picked up a victory. Also with the white pieces, she played against Kajal Naidu. It was this interesting Karakan line, which I despise very, very much. We had the early trade of the light squared bishops. You're trying to hang on to this pawn as much as you can with white. And, you can get a very good position, but black gets good counterplay, which you always have to be wary of. And here, going for tactics, bishop takes c3 blunders the game. You might say, wait, hang on, what's the idea after takes here? The idea is probably this fork, but there is simply b5, which stops the fork. It hits the knight. Both pieces hang. The bishop comes back. You lose the knight. I bring my knight back. I safeguard my queen. I trade off into this endgame. Trade off a set of rooks. Pick up a couple of pawns. Pick up another pawn. Pick up the rook. And it was very easy for Hayley Nel. But she's not the only one picking up victories. Oh, I didn't mean to shift the screen. We had Jan Anzel Laubscher. Also with the white pieces, she played a ready. She played a straight up ready. It was very nice. It came into like a Pietz kind of thing. We had an early trade of the bishop for the knight. The queen, was not offside. But both queens were quite active for a period of time here. A couple of mistakes made by both sides. We traded off the dark squared bishops. Here, a couple of mistakes, a couple of mutual blunders. Taking this is very bad. The best move here is queen h6. Because then knight comes in threatening mate. You hit this knight. If, for example, king h8, you obviously can pick up this knight. So completely winning. Queen g5 doesn't have the same threat because the knight comes back. And you're not able to quite generate the same attack. You can. Obviously, h6 was an inaccuracy. And it's the second mistake that gets you queen d5. Now I can safeguard everything. And I can basically deliver checkmate. And one last one, a win for Robyn, Julian and Klaasen over Dia Naidu. Dia playing a d4. And this was a very interesting setup. We had like a pseudo Queen's Indian defense. A very interesting opening played by both players here. We had the knight jumping in early from Dia, and she got a decent position. But here on move 12, she makes a mistake. According to theory, you can play rook f3, or you can play d takes c5. That's the games that are in the database, but these players are thinking on their own. And she plays queen f3, which just loses on the spot to c4, which is missed. Bishop a6. Now we get to play c4 for ourselves. So white is still doing fine. A couple of trades. We get the bishop back and whatnot. And white, Dia was up a pawn for a period of time here. But, it's still going to be difficult to win this. There's a few weaknesses here in the white position that you've got to safeguard. It's not easy. We trade off the rooks. Queen comes in. And you've just got to find a way to hang on here. Black starts to get in. They pick up this pawn. And rook e2 was a fatal mistake. Queen takes over check. You push. Queen comes back. Now you're from up a pawn to down a pawn. And you're not quite going to safeguard everything. That pawn on e4 is dreadful to try and defend against. As the king gets closer, it's going to be checked. You lose a second pawn. Now you're hoping for a perpetual, and you're not going to get it. The queen safeguards itself, and the king is hunted, and you're going to promote the pawn, the a pawn, and after queen b1, Dia had to resign. Now, I flew through all the games because there was 4 of them, but it looks like this. After 7 rounds, the ranking cross table, Jan Karsten, Laubscher, Chloe Badenhorst, Hayley, Nel, and Robyn, Julian, and Klaasen, all on 5 points. They have a whole point lead over Joya, Imkhitha, and Alexia, Amrouni. Then you've got Sakila Mashango on 3.5, Dianaidu on 3, 2.5 points for Chismo Bashoma, Jackie Krobla on 2, Kajul Naidu on 2, and Grief Marie on 1. Struggling a little bit there. But now we will go back and we will look at the open section. I have one game to show you. And it does feature 2 interesting players. It features the leader, Jan Karsten. He had half a point lead going into this round. And he's playing someone who's got a very interesting story. He's playing Khanya Mazibuko. And if I'm not mistaken, not misremembering, Khanya unfortunately was defaulted yesterday because his cell phone went off. It was a horrible set of circumstances. You never like to see it. But his cell phone went off, and the players are under strict instructions to have their phones off and to hand them into the arbiter. So he had no choice. He lost the game because of that. So he's coming in now. He's got something to prove. He's going to try and play, aggressive against the leader. And we get a Grunfeld defense from Jan. We get takes, d4, and we get the mainline Grunfeld. It is lovely to see. I love the Grunfeld. Your Black is fighting along this. They've given white a big boy center, but you're going to chop it. And you're going to challenge and everything. So it's not easy to play as white, despite having what in theory should be a nice advantage. e6, now we offer a queen trade, but look at that, knight to e5. Again, if you take me, I take you. I'm also hitting this bishop. So what are you going to do? White has taken off center, so this bishop will have a permanent threat on c3 with the rook lingering behind. You've got double pawns. Was it a worthy decision? We trade the queens and we play rook fd1. The idea, of course, is if takes, and you grab this bishop and you get greedy, you most likely lose. Because there's this check at the back, bishop blocks, and now you get in here. And there's no way to defend this. It's really, really bad. So instead we get bishop d7, which blocks. Now we get bishop dropping back to b3. We get bishop to c6. We get f3 defending. Rook dc8. Knight jumps into the center, attacking the bishop. Bishop drops back to e8. And now rook ab1. And this is going to require some maneuvering. White has got weaknesses that Jan can try and exploit. But black's pieces are not exactly the most active. I mean, this bishop aside, and even then it's not doing a heck of a lot. There's 3 pieces sitting on its diagonal. This rook is staring at this pawn, which could be taken unless the knight moves and the bishop defends it. This rook is not doing anything, and the light squared bishop is not doing anything. So, pros and minuses. We now begin to maneuver both sides. The rook gets kicked around a little bit, and now we go for tactics. Beautiful move here, takes. If you take the rook, I take the bishop with check, and then I'll pick the knight back up. I'll get 2 pieces for the rook and just win. So, bishop to f2 is played instead. Now, rook to c7. Again, knight to b5, we trade off the dark square bishops and we play rook to c6. And now we decide to go knight to d6. I'm almost certain that you could have had a draw by playing knight d4 again. I'm almost certain you could have had a draw with knight d4. Because the rook only really has one choice. It can try and hang about and take c3, for example, which is no longer defended. But then you could play knight takes c6, because takes and the knight drops off. If you take, and then you grab the knight, and then this is completely winning. So you've got to be careful here. So, we got all of this, and now we went back here. Knight went into a d6, but now we get knight to c5. The bishop is forced back to c2, and now rook a6. Now, all of a sudden, black has a, one-way street. All of a sudden, the pieces are active. The bishop picks up a couple of pawns. We get this bishop sacrifice to try and, get that, because we grab now the bishop on g2. So still even material, still a close game, except on the clock. Look at this. Khanya Mazibuko, 40 minutes versus Jan Karsten, 6 minutes. Now, they've got about 6 moves to make until the 40th move, when I do believe they get more time. Knight to e7, king to d4. We get b6, king c3, rook b8, and this is going to be won and lost in an endgame. And here it is, move 38, knight b5 is a blunder. Here, in this position, you should have taken on b7 and played something as simple as either rook to g2 or rook to h4. So one of these two moves. I say simple, I would not have played this. 5, a6 kicks the knight back, still to a3, still an inaccurate move, and now knight to c5. Black has the initiative, the rook comes in, we give a check, and we win with a simple fork. Khanya Mazibuko resigns, it is a check, and it is picking up the rook, and you will not survive this. And this was important. This victory was important for Jan, because those around him faltered. Judah Levitan lost to Daniel Barish. I will, go through the game quite quickly. It was a Queen's Gambit accepted. Judah played, semi-dynamically. The white position was in some straight for a period of time here. Just doesn't capitalize. And, what can you do? There's tactics afloat everywhere. But there's just not enough material. There's 2 pieces for the rook. We trade queens. We trade into this endgame where you're down 2 pieces. You lose. Then, Caleb. Caleb also lost against Charlton Manyasta. It was a Spanish. It was, Morphe's defense. It was the classical line of Morphe's defense. And the Spanish is always a maneuvering game. We've got an imbalanced pawn structure. We trade off the darks with bishops. The knight was maneuvering. We offered a queen trade and so forth. And it was an interesting game. We traded off the knights. It looked balanced for a long time here as we got towards time control. But move 37 was a mistake, b4. And move 38 was a mistake, queen f3. And that was all that was needed. Check, check. We traded off the rooks. And this should have always been winning for the guy with the black pieces. And eventually it was as we traded off. And we entered the queen endgame. But these are notoriously difficult when you're down pawns. And the pawns begin marching down the board. You can't stop them. The king is checked. You go for perpetual. And that was the thing. That is what Caleb was hoping for, that he would have a perpetual check or even a mate if the king was not accurate. But he was accurate enough. There was blocks, and there was a second promotion. There was check, and there was king d2, which is mate in 1. Because you have to bring this queen, and you would take it and mate. And so, we go to the standings after 7 rounds in the open section. And it looks as follows. Jan Karsten, 5.5 points. A full point lead over Banele Mhango. A full 1.5 point lead over Judah, James Dinham, and Caleb. And then 3.5 points each for Charlton and for Jack van Zyl-Roth. Michael Simpson, Daniel Crowley, they made a draw against each other. Then Daniel Barish, who picked up a victory. Calvin Jan Klaasen, 2.5 points. And Khanya Mazibuko, 1.5 points. He is having a rough tournament. 1 victory and 1 draw, defaulted in 1 round. And today losing to the leader. And that is all I have for you, ladies and gentlemen. 7 rounds of highly anticipated action. We still have, 4 rounds to go? So it'll be very exciting to see how this tournament finishes.